Hey everyone, you're with Noor here and welcome back to another video on the channel. In this video, we're going to be going over how to build a business that runs without you and why systems alone won't do it. Now, before we get into the video, in case you're new here and you've not had the displeasure of meeting me, I am the ex-head of operations for an 8-figure info company where I help the company scale from 100K a month all the way to 700K a month as the operations manager, and had the privilege of joining the team when it was a team of 5, which consists of 2 co-founders, myself as the operations manager, and 2 closers. And we went from a team of 5 to a team of 40. And during that time, across my 4 years, I also supported fulfillment across 4,000 clients across various verticals, ranging from coaches, consultants, and marketing agencies, and also course sellers across different niches and whatnot. Now, during those 4 years, everything was built in a way in which the systems that were laid out allowed the founders to scale without becoming the bottleneck, meaning that they didn't have to be dragged back into fulfillment, client fires, client retention, or anything of that note. Now, the purpose of this channel that you see today essentially help 6 to 7 figure coaches, consultants, and course sellers or info product founders build businesses that can scale without them, expand my network beyond the corner of my living room, and build goodwill before I inevitably try to sell you something. The game is the game, and I don't apologize for that. And on topic of the living room, I'm actually in my childhood bedroom at the time of recording this, as I'm away on holiday. Now, preemptive disclaimers: voice is boring as shit. Magnesium plus these videos will fix your apnea. That's not medical advice. Take that with a pinch of salt. I'm an absolute rambler. I'm working on it. If you've not been able to tell already, and there's no magic fix it or get rich quick pill in these videos. Message me if you find one. I've been searching for 8 years. Let's boogie. Now, coming back to the business or the video, sorry, we're going to be going over how to build it in a way that actually runs without you and why systems alone won't do it. Now, the reason this video exists to begin with, because I want you to picture a founder, and this founder in question is quite specific, and I suspect that you don't actually have to picture this founder very hard. They did everything right. They read the books, they built the SOPs, they bought the project management tool, documented the processes, hired the VA, maybe even hired an ops manager. The Notion is beautiful, the ClickUp is organized, and all these fancy tools are appearing to be, rainbows and sunshine, okay? But nothing ships without them. The team still messages them all day. Clients still want them on the calls. Deals still need them to close. And they built the systems, but they're still the bottleneck. Now, that picture of that founder that I just painted is more likely than you that's probably watching the video. And if it's not you, then this video is probably not going to be of use to you, because you probably designed your business in a fantastic manner. If it is you, however, this is the truth that nobody in the typical build systems videos will usually tell you. It's not that you're lazy or anything like that and you didn't build the systems wrong. You were probably sold an incomplete map, in the sense that the solution presented to you isn't just systems in isolation, okay? Systems, which typically mean documented processes, are one layer of founder dependency, when in reality there are up to 5. Now, documenting your processes whilst the other 4 layers still run through you is basically like fixing one leak in a boat with 5 holes. The boat still sinks, but you just worked harder on the way down. So the purpose of this video is to give you the complete map, all 5 layers that your business depends on, and a function by function tour of where each one lives in your actual business, the exact order to dismantle them in, the fix for each one, and the reason your previous attempts collapsed, and routed everything straight back to you. Okay, so we're going to go over the full works here and why systems is just one facet of this entire goal that we're trying to achieve, which is basically to eliminate you from your business in a good way, of course, so that your business can actually scale without you. Now, here's exactly what we're going to cover. The systems lie, which is why documenting your processes, is correct, incomplete, and quietly keeping you trapped. The founder dependency stack, in which, the 5 layers where your business depends on you: knowledge, decision, relationship, delivery, and sales. How each layer lies to you, because believe it or not, each layer will miscontextualize things if you look at it at face value, similar to how metrics can easily lie to you. Or not lie to you, but the context will be missing and you will then misinterpret it. The tour of your business, so how acquisition, sales, fulfillment, operations, and finance each stay founder centric, even with systems in place, and which layer is the real culprit in each one. The order that holds, so this is a big one, because when you fix these in the wrong sequence, it's why delegation can keep collapsing back onto you, purely because of the fact that you fix these different things in the wrong order, and there's an appropriate way to do these things. We're going to go over the actual fix for every layer, the founder subsidy, so the hidden cost inside your healthy looking margin, and how to put a number on it, because there's loads of businesses that have a healthy margin, but what that doesn't reveal beyond the spreadsheet is how heavily involved are you in the business, in the sense that if you were to leave, your business will collapse. Okay. Time paradox, and this is to do with the objection you're probably already feeling as you watch this: I'm too busy to build this, and why that's the trap itself, why you actually won't let go. So the key reasons why you as a founder would hold on, and why two of them can't be fixed with systems at all. And then the full dependency audit. So this is where at the end of the video you can score yourself across every layer, find the exact intersection where your dependency is the worst, and essentially leave with your roadmap. Now, when this becomes relevant, it's essentially when your business is no longer small enough to run off a feeling, typically north of 30K a month, and you're heading through the 6 figures a month mark. Because here's the thing: when you're small, being everything works. You jump into sales, you save client accounts, you write the copy, you fix the tech, and at that point it's not really a flaw, because it's how small businesses survive. However, it stops working at scale, and here's when you know you've crossed the line. And the line in which it crosses is where when you've already built systems and somehow you're still involved in everything, and alongside this, and essentially after you've built the systems and somehow you're still in everything, and alongside this, when you have capable people who can't move without you. Okay, so this is where even when you have a team in place, they can't operate without you, and as a result, you as a founder are starting to quietly resent them for it, because now you've hired people and you're wondering why they can't do what needs to be done. Another area another key point in time when this video actually becomes relevant is when revenue looks fine, but cash capacity, delivery, and your own calendar feel unstable. And alongside this, you as a founder can't take a full week off without the phone in your hand and fires on your return. And finally, when you've hired to relieve pressure, but you've ended up with more questions, more salaries riding on you, and less freedom than before, which is basically what you aim to solve, with the hires to begin with. So here's what you'll hopefully see differently after this: when your team is underperforming versus when they're under-systemized, because sometimes you go back and forth wondering, which one is what. Or is it your team's fault, or is it a systems problem, whatever it may be. When you're leading versus when you're narrating. So again, there's a difference between leadership and narrating, and it's really important to understand that a team that's waiting for a dictation or direction from you isn't a team yet, regardless of what your org chart says. When you have client loyalty versus founder loyalty, and why the difference decides whether you can ever step back from delivery, because some of you watching this right now, maybe fulfillment is heavily centered around you without you even realizing it, and that could be quite problematic. And then when your margin is real versus when it's you, unpaid, propping it up. And finally, when only I can do this is true versus when it's just untested, because most of what you've labeled only you can do has never once been put to the test, or probably has never been put to the test without you even realizing. So the decisions this should help you avoid: a couple of things here. Prevent you from building more systems as the answer to everything, because this is one of the biggest mistakes founders make. They just think they can just spit out systems for the sake of spitting it out to fix problems, when in reality that's not going to do anything. Hiring a rock star to fix operations, and watching a bad structure break a good person. This is where you can hire an A player, and then you assume that they're actually not an A player, when actually the systems that you have is so bad that not even a competent A player can actually fix that. And they probably can, but it's a whole different beast that's going to take a long time. Trying to hand off sales or clients first, my God, this was the one that would, it will help you avoid doing this, because they hurt the most, whilst the foundation layers are still trapped in your head. And if you do this whilst these things are trapped in your head, it never ends well. Help you avoid buying software as a substitute for structure, because organized chaos is still chaos. And then it will help you avoid concluding that delegation doesn't work based on attempts that are structurally guaranteed to fail. One of my favorite points here, because people always think that it's a hiring problem, that no one can fit their fancy role that apparently they can do, when in reality your systems are absolutely dog shit, and the structure around your hires sets them up to fail, regardless of how good the talent actually is. Think of it like this way. The easiest example I can give is if you bring a closer into a dog shit environment with dog shit appointment flow, a dog shit offer and whatnot, and they don't succeed, well, of course, of course, they're not going to succeed. They can only do so much. You need to have the appropriate structure in place for various hires for them to actually excel and succeed, unless the hire in question is coming in place to build, said structure out for you. And in reality, you shouldn't do that because that should be done on the founder level. Now, on the topic of systems, right? One thing that we want to make clear is that this is step one, and it's not the whole staircase where loads of people get this wrong. Now, I agree with the standard advice because it's genuinely right as far as it goes. Yes, a business that runs without you, it needs documented processes. Systems are real, they're necessary, and they're foundational, and everything you've heard about building them is worth doing. Now, I'll even show you a method later in this video that makes them actually get built, because the usual sit down and write your SOPs approach, it fails for a reason that's worth understanding. But here's the piece I had to learn the hard way, and that hard way is the fact that you can document every process in your business and remain completely structurally trapped. Because a process document answers one question. How is this done? How is this done? It does not answer who's allowed to decide. It does not answer, why do clients only want you? It does not answer why does nothing ship until you polished it. And it doesn't answer why does revenue stop when you stop selling. Now, those are 4 different dependencies that I've just listed out there, and none of them is fixed by an SOP. That's why the founder with a beautiful notion is still drowning, and all these colorful spreadsheets and whatnot is pretty much renders useless, okay? Which makes me feel great because I've seen people with colorful spreadsheets, and I'm always jealous about the visual appeal of them because I can't make my stuff look as good as that. But luckily my stuff has substance, so even though it's quite ugly, it works, okay? So hopefully you'll forgive me for my lack of graphic design, especially in these videos, as I do appreciate it's not the prettiest to look at in the form of these docs and whatnot. And yeah, come back to the main point here. So yeah, long story short, you can have everything look good, but it could deem ineffective. Now, 6 months of honest effort could go into fixing one hole in a boat with 5, and nobody will tell you about the other 4 because most people then genuinely don't know they're there. So let's get into all 5 here. Now, the founder dependency stack is the complete picture of where a business depends on its founder. Every founder is trapped in a different combination of these, and the audit at the end will show you your exact profile. For each of these layers, I'm going to give you what it is, why it matters, how it lies to you, why you do it, and where the fix lives. Pay close attention to how it lies to you because, believe it or not, everything in your business will lie to you, especially when it comes to data and numbers and all these different things. I made an entire training around how your numbers can lie to you, and it's 1 hour and 30 minutes long. So I'm going to share some of those principles here as well in this specific topic when it comes to these different layers. So the first layer is to do with knowledge dependency. Okay, so this is where the business can't function without your specific expertise because the how-to lives entirely in your head. Now, the reason this matters is that, God forbid, if you're hit by a bus tomorrow, the business will quite literally stop. New hires can't succeed because they can't read your mind, and training is impossible and scale is a fantasy. Now, the reason, the way this actually lies to you is because you on a founder level, you probably think you have a team and you actually have a good group of people, capable people waiting for you to dictate the next step, and you feel like you're leading when in reality you are narrating, which is a big difference, okay? Now, the reason founders do this is because it feels faster on a founder level to tell someone what to do than to write down the process, okay? You've convinced yourself that your knowledge is too nuanced to document, and be honest, like a lot of founders have egos, and therefore you enjoy being the oracle that everyone comes to for answers because it gives you a kick knowing that you're Superman or Superwoman, when in reality that's the equivalent of you shooting yourself in the foot. The second layer is decision dependency. So this is where the business can't move without your approval, and everything has to come through you for every choice, big and small. And then this matters because your team learns to wait for permission rather take initiative, which is problematic, okay? And the speed of your entire inbox quite literally becomes the speed of your the speed of your entire company becomes the speed of your personal inbox because it's centered around how quickly you're going to respond to the individuals. Now, the way this lies to you is that you as a founder would think you're maintaining high standards when you're actually building a culture of learned helplessness. The team isn't incapable, They're just afraid of doing it differently than you would, and therefore they constantly go to you again and again. Now, the reason founders do this is because, again, you are a bit of a control freak, to put it candidly. You fear that if you don't approve everything, quality will drop and the brand suffers, and you've confused delegating authority with abdicating responsibility. Now, the third layer is relationship dependency, and this is where clients would stay because of you and not the business, and they want access to the founder and not the team. Now, this is very problematic because you as a founder can never step away from delivery. Your personal capacity caps the number of clients the business can hold, and you're the single point of failure for retention. Now, the way this lies to you is that you think you have high client loyalty when actually you have high founder loyalty. So this is where whenever you try to step back, you will actually spike your churn rate because your product is fleshed out in a way in which you are the center point of it. And then whenever someone churns, you take it as proof that you can actually never step back. Now, the reason why you are so heavily involved in this usually stems from a place of either ego or fear, where, again, it's always good to feel wanted, and you sold the vision of yourself, and again, there's high importance of you, and you feel great whenever they need you. And on the flip side, it's also out of fear because you may have sold access to me in the early days to close deals, and the promise trapped you as you scaled, okay? And this is quite prominent even for myself, where because my advisory offer is very lean and mean, and it's just me, myself, and I at the moment. Of course, there's access to me, it's Slack access. I'm fleshing out a program at the moment and whatnot. But as I scale up, this is going to be rescinded, because then I can't, there's only so many founders I can work with on a one-to-one basis, right? And I'm not going to continue to do this, especially not from a place of, never from a place of fear, because that's the worst place to operate from, as you'll start saying anything and everything to close a couple of deals, and you never want to do that. At least up until 30k a month, guys, because again, 30 to 50k a month, just get there ASAP, and then you have the cash flow and the momentum to actually systemize things. The fourth layer is delivery dependency, and this is where quality would depend on your personal involvement. Your team would do the basic work and you would add the magic touch at the end. Now, the reason why this matters from an understanding standpoint is that it creates a false sense of skill where you think you've delegated delivery and you're actually still the final quality checkpoint for everything, which means you haven't delegated it at all, because again, it's still dependent on you. Now, the way this lies to you is that your team looks productive, but in reality, their output is unusable without your polish. So you're basically paying full salaries for partial completion, and this also ties to the point of founder subsidy, which you may not actually realize, in which you're paying a salary and then paying more with your own time to do their work, essentially. Now, the reason why you probably do this is out of perfectionism, and you believe that nobody can do it quite like you, so you accept 80% of the work because you secretly plan to do the final 20% yourself anyway, and your team knows it, so 80% has become the target. Now, a really important note here is that every business is different, and some fulfillment models, depending on how you operate, it may genuinely need your expertise. If you're able to systemize it to a point where, 80% of it's done, and then the 20% required from you isn't going to make or break your schedule, and it's not going to keep you handcuffed to the business, that's fine. I'm just framing this in a way in which that 20%, it can be quite heavy at scale for a lot of businesses, especially in the info space. So that's something to keep in mind. Fifth layer is sales dependency. This is where revenue stops when you stop selling, and you're the only one who can close, especially, the big deals. The reason this matters is because you as a founder can never take a break from revenue generation. This is quite literally, the blood and oxygen for your business practically. And therefore, whenever you leave, the pipeline dries up. And then, when you look at it at a high level, the growth is entirely dependent on your calendar, and you're ultimately a slave to the business. Now, the way this lies to you is that on a founder level, you think you have a great close rate, which you probably would, but you have founder authority doing the closing and not a sales process. So this is quite an important note, where a lot of founders, because they're the face of the brand, you can actually get away with a bit of a dodgy process. I say dodgy process as if you're scamming someone. A dodgy process in the sense that you don't have a process, because you may be leaning heavily on your authority content case studies where clients are pretty much sold before they even get on a call. But, that's not a proper sales system. It's a personality, and personalities don't scale. And then when you actually hire sales reps in place, if you have a sales team, they can't replicate that because they're not you. Okay. Again, I relate this to myself at the moment where I'm able to sell, clients for my advisory offer at this moment in time purely through content and free audits, and is value based. It's not, long-winded sales call where I got to do verbal jujitsu to get someone past the finish line. But at the same time, what I have now, it's not really scalable. Okay. And whenever I do get to a point where it's high volume, especially when the info product comes out, that's where we'll adjust the sales process accordingly. Now, the reason you probably do this is because you have the fear of losing revenue. You're terrified a higher closer would burn leads, so you hold the function long past the point you should have transferred it because it feels like the most direct control over cash. I'd argue that closing is one of those things where you should hold on to for a very long time, but there does come a point where holding on to it will do way more damage than good, because on a founder level, you do want to focus on visionary-led projects as opposed to, just being stuck on the phones all day, as it can get quite problematic if your time isn't set up accordingly. Now, here's the order that holds in terms of, how to attack them, and why your attempts have collapsed, okay? Here's the single most expensive thing nobody tells you. The layers that we're going to go over here, like I said, they've got a mandatory order, and almost every founder attacks them backwards, okay? So you feel relationship, delivery, and sales dependency most because they're the ones eating your calendar. So that's where you attack first. You try to hand off client relationships or delivery or closing, and it collapses every time. And this is because you can't transfer a client relationship, a quality standard, or a sales process that was never documented or defined in the first place. The person you hand it to has nothing to hold, and therefore that person in question, they improvise and the whole thing wobbles, the client complains, you dive back in and you conclude the delegation doesn't work, okay? Delegation works fine, you just ran the sequence backwards, and the order in question is bottom up, okay? So everything that we just went over here is literally in the order that we've just prescribed here. So the first one is the knowledge. Is where you extract what's in your head, and then nothing else is transferable until it exists outside you. Because for as long as it's contained within you, you're always going to have to get involved. Even once you extract it outside of your head, you may have to get involved here and there, but then here and there will eventually become completely null and void when your team members become aware of how you operate and what the standards should look like in terms of what good looks like, what great looks like, what bad looks like. Decision second. Once knowledge is documented, define who can act on it without you. Delivery third. With knowledge and decision rules in place, a quality assurance standard can hold without your polish. And then relationship fourth. This is where the system can now carry clients, so loyalty can shift from you to it. And then sales is the fifth and final one. You hand off the close only once delivery has proven it holds without you, so the business can actually fulfill what gets sold, okay? So foundation first, all the top will not hold. This is the order you want to attack things in, because if you do these different things in a different order, right, it's just not going to end well, okay? This has been designed in a sequential manner so that by the time you actually hand things over to the next person, it's like a conveyor belt where you're able to actually close clients, hand them over, they're able to succeed, and finally you remove yourself from the sales equation and someone else can close for you and plug clients into a system that you're no longer involved in because your team members are handling it accordingly. Now, here is where the dependency actually lives, and what we'll do is basically a tour of your business because it's more or less the same across the board, okay? Now, before the fix is in question, let's make this concrete, because 5 layers of dependency, it's a diagnosis and you experience it as a calendar. So what we're going to do is walk through the core functions of the business, and I'll show you the specific way each one stays founder-centric even after you've built systems. As we go, you're going to notice the pattern here. It's almost never the documented process that's missing. It's just a different layer of the stack every time. So the first of which is acquisition and marketing. This is where the content is your face, your voice, your stories. There may be a content SOP, a posting schedule, editor, and whatever it may be, and yet nothing ships until you've written the hook, approved the angle, or filmed the thing in question. Now, if you strip yourself out here, the pipeline will go quiet within as little as 2 weeks. Okay, the systems exist, but the dependency in this area is knowledge, where the positioning lives in your head and nobody else can write in your voice because your voice was never defined. And then delivery, this is where nothing publishes without your polish because you're still involved in it. Okay, so business escapes this when the message is documented as tightly as the process. Offers, angles, voice rules, proof library, all these different things defined so that someone else can actually produce the output that sounds like the brand rather than a tribute act. So what you can do now, especially when it comes to acquisition and marketing, you can set up a Claude project with all your trainings, your transcripts, your emails, whatever it may be, and you can actually emulate your own voice. And then your team members can leverage that to produce emails, VSLs, copies, posts with your own voice without you having to be involved. And the only thing you could probably approve is the topics that you get out, okay? But nowadays in the climate of AI, this is a very easy fix to actually sort out. But you can see here, the dependency layers involved here is knowledge, but it's also to do with delivery as well. Now let's get into sales. Sales is where, you have a CRM, a pipeline, maybe even a setter or even a closer potentially. And the close rate collapses when the moment anyone but you takes a call, so you concluded you can't hand it off. The dependency is sales layer, which is obvious, but if you look closer, it's knowledge again, because usually your process is founder authority plus instinct, and the instinct was never extracted. So therefore, there's nothing for a closer to run off of. And that's why the fix is recording and extracting your calls before you ever hire one, and why sales come off your plate blast after delivery holes. So a really important thing to note with sales, and I've seen this across the entire industry, as well as all the clients that I've had the privilege of working with, your close rate will naturally drop when someone else takes it over, because on a founder level, you're just going to have way more authority and clout, because usually prospects are bought into you specifically before they come to the call. So when you actually hire a closer, the close rate will take a slight dip because, again, they don't carry the same weight and authority as you, and therefore they may not, the prospects may not have the same level of conviction from a buying standpoint that they would have if they were speaking to you. But at the same time, the close rate shouldn't fall off completely. It should be a slight dip. So typically, we've seen this to be the case where, you as a founder may close like 60%, then your closer may close like 50 to 45%. And this varies depending on ticket price and whatnot. But if the dip is like that, it's not detrimental whatsoever. If the dip, however, is like you do 60% and then your closer does something ridiculous like 20%, or even if it halves, then that's where we'd raise eyeballs around what's going on in terms of from an ability standpoint. But I needed to make that clear there. Fulfillment and retention, and this is where the team delivers the work and the clients message you. This is where escalations route back to you, renewals want to call with you, the magic touch QC is yours. 2-layer stack relationship, you sold access to me and the loyalty never transferred. And delivery, where the stand lives in your judgment and not a document. This is usually the function where the founder subsidy is the biggest, and this is where you always want to count, or when you're looking at your founder subsidy, you want to count how much of retention is actually just you personally being excellent at 11 p.m., when you're trying to fix problems and firefight without even realizing. Operations, my bread and butter. You might even have an ops manager, and every genuine judgment call still crosses your desk because nobody defined what anyone is allowed to decide. This is the purest decision dependency in the business, where the SOPs say how, and nothing says who may. And therefore the speed of execution equals speed of your inbox, and your ops hire has quietly become an expensive relay station for questions that still end with you. I've seen this to be the case far too often, where people hire an operations manager. By the end of the day, a significant amount of decisions are still being made through the founder. Majority of decisions should be ran through your operations manager, and you should get them to a point where they're able to actually operate in your line of thinking, as well as being able to think for themselves where relevant and where needed. And then finance. So this is the one nobody talks about, where invoices go out, bookkeeping happens, and you're the only person who knows whether the business is actually healthy. No dashboard a competent operator could read, no numbers anyone else owns, and the decisions is made off your feel for the bank balance, okay? Again, knowledge and decision dependency again, and it's a quiet reason you can't step back even when everything runs. You can't leave a cockpit even if you're the only one that can read the instruments, okay? Really important to note. So run your eye back over that list and then notice what repeats. Every function has systems, or could have them tomorrow, and every function still routes to you through a layer no SOP touches. That's the whole argument of this video in one tour. The business isn't founder-centric because you failed to document it. It's founder-centric because documentation only ever fixed one layer of 5, function by function, across the entire company, which means the fixes below aren't generic advice. As you go through them, hold your own worst function in mind, the one whose paragraph above made you wince, and because that's where you'll apply them first, okay? So look at all the dependencies, assess where it strikes a chord in you, because I guarantee there's some examples that you can apply immediately in your own business, and you've probably listed out some that you need to fix and resolve, and we're going to go over how you can actually do that. So the first fix is to do with the knowledge, and this is where you do knowledge, then delete, and then capture, okay? Never order and never author. So 2 moves in sequence. First, delete. Now you may be wondering, what do you mean by delete? And this is where, before we systemize anything, you should kill the work that shouldn't even exist to begin with. Not everything drowning you here deserves to be saved, okay? Deleted work is the cheapest form of freedom there is. No SOP, no hire, no handoffs, no management, all these different things. Run every task through 3 questions here. Does this genuinely have to happen, or does it just feel that way? Does it move the business forward, or does it only keep people busy? And if it disappeared tomorrow, what would truly break, okay? The last one, most founders don't even test, because they're so fearful that if they stop doing something for a while, it's just going to fall apart and break, okay? So this is where you're going to test it for real. Stop doing the task for a week and just watch what happens. If something breaks, then it matters and you systemize it. It's no big deal, okay? But if nothing breaks, which you'll be very surprised, the thing in question never needed doing, okay? And that week of deletion just became permanent. You'll be shocked how much of your week survives as nothing happened. Skip this step and you'll spend months lovingly documenting work you should have switched off. So I can't stress this enough, guys. The amount of dog shit I've seen across people's businesses where they think they need things, when in reality, they don't even need to systemize it. They just need to let it crash and burn and completely die. And on a founder level, they just need to hit the delete button because it renders useless for their organization. They've just kept it in their organization because they feel that it's needed for the business to function, when in reality, if you actually take a step back, you'll notice that that function isn't needed whatsoever and is taking up mental real estate inside your own head. So long story short, before you systemize anything, test whether that thing in question should even be needed and take a few days off and away from actually being involved in that thing. And if nothing breaks, delete it. You simply don't need it, okay? There's a really big one there. Now, after this, you then want to capture, okay? Because there'll be things there that do cause things to break if you do step away, which is fine. That's what we want to find. We want to look for the things that are actually relevant here. This is where you want to capture like proper documentations. And the reason why SOPs would never typically get written usually is that when you author documentation from a blank page, it's almost a second full-time job stacked on the one that's already drowning you. It was never going to happen, and it wasn't discipline, it was the method, because you're already busy as it is, and then writing an SOP up is just another ball ache, okay? This is where you want to change the method. You don't write the playbook, you record the work you're already doing, and the recording becomes the first draft. So the next time you do the thing that only you can do, you want to screen record it and narrate what you're doing and why as you go. So that's your SOP draft, and it costs you 0 additional hours because you just documented the task you were doing anyway. Now, if you do 10 of those, you'll have a library. And better still, you want to make the documentation the hire's job for whatever function you bring them in. They watch you once, and then they do it themselves whilst writing the steps, and then you can review and correct. That doc becomes their onboarding instead of your homework, and they now own a process that they understand because they wrote it, okay? And this is extremely powerful because now you're giving them ownership from the rip. And you may be wondering, oh, but no, if we give the hire the power to document and whatnot, Aren't they then systemizing something that, we've yet to systemize on a founder level? Yes and no. Yes, because you're giving them authority and freedom to actually document the steps. No, because those steps that you've handed them are already proven. They're just reaffirming it with their own way of recording. And you're also QCing it, okay? So look, this is the most convenient way to do it, because if you don't want to, flesh out an entire library's worth of SOPs in advance, because on a founder level you're already busy, just document by capturing and not by authoring, okay? And the habit that makes it stick is simply understanding that, understanding that you should never do a recurring task silently again. If it will happen again, the next time it comes up, do it out loud, recorded. And this is where, you do it once more, but never silently. This is extremely powerful, because now you're already doing the thing in question. You may as well just record yourself doing it and speak out loud, and then you'll have a rough version of something that's being systemized without you having to go through the mental torture of setting aside hours to do like step-by-step SOPs. Now, would I rather you sit down and do step-by-step SOPs? Absolutely. It's SOPs in its most polished format. However, I'm also aware, after having worked with, hundreds of, 6 to 7 figure business owners, you simply don't have time. And what we're trying to do here is get you out of the weeds so you do have time. And the most efficient way of doing this is not spending hours on SOPs because you don't have that. Is simply by documenting what you're already doing and running, over the shoulder based trainings where you simply click on the Loom button and you just go over everything, okay? Then when you do have time freed up, you can get really fancy and then spend a lot more time polishing things off. So that is the side of things where we're trying to look at your knowledge, and we're either going to delete what you don't need in the business, and then we'll capture what you do need and systemize things accordingly through capturing and not by authoring, because capturing is a more simpler way of operating, especially with your bandwidth and with your time. The second fix, decision, okay? And this is where we're going to implement decision-based rules. Now, whenever you build an SOP, usually it will tell your team how to do the work. What most founders miss out on is that it doesn't tell them what they're allowed to decide. So what happens is they'll execute the documented process right up to the first judgment call, and then they'll stop and message you, okay? So what you've done here is you've moved the bottleneck further down the process, but you've not removed it. So the fix for this is that for every role, explicitly define what they can do without asking and what must be escalated. So for example, if it's a refund under £500, they can decide. If it's a discount over 10% that someone needs to grant, they need to escalate to their sales manager, whatever it may be. Content matches the standard, publish, client threatens to leave, escalate. What you're doing here for these various functions as examples, you're giving people the framework for how to think and not just what to do. So I'll give you a real life example of this. In the past 4 years, when I was running the operations for the previous company I was part of, the founders only were pulled in out of the 4,000 clients that we signed. And then, by the way, the company signed way more than 4,000 clients, but I listed 4,000 clients, at least from the time I was there. I've only ever pulled in the founders for anywhere between 15 to 20 client issues across 4,000 clients. And more so, I'd rather say I'm leaning towards the 15 mark because 20 seems excessive. Now, if you look at that hit rate, the fact that the founders only had to get involved in around 15 to 20 client issues across 4 years, across 4,000 clients, that's not that bad whatsoever, okay? And that's purely because we had a clearly defined escalation process in place where I handled all the complete dog shit that was going on with the problem clients, and I buried the bodies where needed without the founders even knowing, because I knew how to handle them accordingly, and they didn't need to know what was going on in terms of the resolutions that were made, because I was operating within agreed parameters. They only were made aware of the 15 or so clients because we had escalation protocols in place where they were pulled in for anything legal related. And that is what allows you on a founder level to be protected, because that's a prime example of having decision rules in place, where if we didn't have decision rules in place, there'd be way more than 15 client situations that would pop up on the founder's table. Now, one thing to notice in terms of what this preserves, you on a founder level, you still own the rules, you just stop being consulted on every application of them. And that's the difference between delegating authority and abdicating responsibility, and it's the fix for the learned helplessness that you accidentally built. So this is where you want to expect it to feel wrong for 2 weeks. Expect a couple of decisions you'd have made differently, and that's not the system failing, that's the system costing less than you actually did. So this is the thing. It's going to feel normal for it to feel wrong and whatnot, and there'll be decisions that are made from your team members that you would have probably made differently, but naturally you'll course correct that over time, and again your team are going to start to operate within the parameters and your line of thinking, and eventually they're going to be able to operate without you having to do like a second look or second guess the judgment or anything like this. Okay, so that is the decision side of things. Delivery, the quality assurance standard. So believe it or not, you're not actually the magic touch, as much as I hate to break your heart if you do have an ego around that. You are the undefined benchmark, okay? So your polish feels irreplaceable because nobody, including you, has ever written down what it consists of, okay? So this is where you want to capture it, the same method as before. Record yourself reviewing 3 pieces of work, narrating exactly what you're checking, what passes, what fails, and why. And out of that recording, define the standard. What 9 out of 10 looks like, what 6 out of 10 looks like, the non-negotiables that fail a piece instantly. Now the standard is checkable by someone who isn't you, okay? And this is then the hard part. And what the hard part is, it's actually behavior, not a document here. Stop accepting 80% work, okay? And we're going to apply context to this. The standard here only holds if falling short means redoing it, not the founder will catch it, okay? The first time you send something back instead of fixing it yourself, you're going to feel the twitch where you're like, oh, this is fast if I just polish it and fix it. That twitch is layer 4 fighting for its life, and you want to let it loose, okay? This is where layer 4, it comes back to, you thinking that you're the only one that can do things and you got a good relationship with the client and whatnot. And in reality, you need to train yourself to let your team members to fix things accordingly. Now, the context I want to apply here comes back to what I mentioned previously, where in some cases, you as a founder, you may need to genuinely be involved in that 20%. And guess what? That 20% may be viable, where it's not going to make or break you from an operational standpoint, and it's not going to eat up your calendar time. If that sounds like you and you're happy with that, that's perfectly fine. Step in and do the 20%. But if there's an avenue where that 20% can genuinely be done by a team member, just train them to handle it just to free up your time and bandwidth, because there's no need for you to keep handling it if it's not something that, is exclusive to you being able to do it, okay? So that's how to actually fix the, delivery dependency layer. The fourth fix, and this is to do with the relationship, is the loyalty transfer. So what you have is founder loyalty, and founder loyalty is transferable. Deliberately, in stages without churn spiking, if the layers beneath it are built, okay, if we built everything out before this, they are transferable in the sense that the loyalty is no longer tied to you and we can transfer it over to a team member. Now the shift here is in the value proposition. We're going to go from access to me to access to the system, okay? So in practice, this is where you'd introduce the team into client relationships gradually and visibly, and you let clients experience results that you demonstrably didn't produce, and change what you personally show up for, which is, to do with strategy moments and milestones, depending on how your product is situated, as opposed to day-to-day delivery, okay? Here's the thing. Clients don't actually want you. They want the outcome you've been personally guaranteeing. And then once the system and your product structure guarantees it, the transfer is a formality. Okay, so this is where you want to elevate the brand above the individual, and you want to stop selling access to you to new clients every day, because every new promise of access is fresh debt. So the way, majority of Impro products, the best ones are designed, are the best ones that aren't attached to the founder on an intimate or one-to-one basis, okay? It typically be an info product in which the results can be achieved through the depth of the videos in question, partnered with group coaching calls alongside other experts, or even yourself maybe once a week. But guess what? Even if you are removed, people can still get results, okay? And that is something very important to know, because the relationship side of things here, there's so many ways to actually fix this, and I'll probably make a separate video around this where it's centered around your product structure, whether it's done for you, do it with you, done with you, sorry, or do it yourself. But it's also to do with your team members in place, or if you have like head of CSM or head of client success, and different account managers and whatnot. Okay, but long story short, there's a way to get yourself out of it, and it's really important to know or understand that clients don't buy into you, they buy into the outcome that you're actually going to deliver. Now, the fifth and final fix is in the sales side of things, and this is the handoff that comes last. Your close rate is founder authority, not process. And so before anyone else can sell, the process has to exist. For most of you watching this right now, especially in the Invo space, there's so much sales training out there, from like the Sam Ovens days all the way to, the current climate. We got Cole Gordon, Jeremy Lee Minor, Matt Ryder, Bill Walsh, all these top players, right, who provide a lot of sales training where you probably already have a sales process in place, to be transparent. But in the rare off chance, if you're a founder and you're selling without a sales process and you're leading with just founder authority, you really want to start to document your conversations and follow a process, not just for your own sake, because it's not relevant or beneficial to you, at least personally, from a sales standpoint, but it's going to be beneficial to your team members that actually need a system to follow, okay? And even if your process is weird and wacky, where it's dependent on founder authority, I can guarantee that there's a pattern involved in your process that can be systemized, and you want to work on fleshing that process out. This is super funny because when I was in my previous company, I wasn't a closer, but I had the second most units at one point. Units closed at one point when it came to the 30 to 36k mastermind packages, because all my sales were done just through pure strategy sessions and actual strategy sessions, not Trojan sales calls. And they were actually like business audit sessions where I would get on a call with clients I already had a fantastic relationship with. I'd fix all their problems and show how we can help in the mastermind, and they'll be closed by the end of the call, because I was able to deliver a significant level of expertise on a one-to-one basis, okay? And then it was really interesting because I thought I was selling without a process until I spoke to a very prominent sales manager. His name's Usman Kayani. I shout out to you, Usman, if you do manage to watch this. And he said to me, he's like, no, I guarantee you have a process without even realizing. So for those of you watching this right now, even if you don't have a process, there's definitely a pattern you're following that can be systemized, and it's definitely something to actually look at here. But long story short, this is where we want to build a training library and a process so that your closers can actually emulate what you do, and you can actually start to sell without you being involved. Now, we do this last on purpose because handing off sales whilst delivery still needs you is how you end up selling work that the business can't fulfill without you, which then doubles your load instead of halving it, which is what we're trying to achieve, okay? Sales comes off your plate when delivery has proven it holds. Then and only then, revenue stops being dependent on your calendar. Now, those are the different fixes here, and you can start to get a picture of how, when you approach this in order for the different functions of your business and apply the different fixes for the different layers, you can start to unpack how much more simple and efficient your business will be, and why the previous attempts to fix things may not have worked when it was purely centered around systems in isolation. Now, I want to go over the founder subsidy here because this is what staying trapped actually costs. Now, before the objections, I want you to actually look at the bill here that's involved in your balance sheet, because your healthy looking margin is hiding the cost of all 5 layers. Now, let's say you're at a 70% gross margin. Now, count on what the margin relies on. It can rely on, and again, this is just a vague example here, and you can fill in the gaps depending on what your business model is in the coaching space, but it can rely on you rewriting your copy, jumping on an escalation call, fixing a broken automation, closing a difficult deal, doing a final QC on everything, and all these different things. So this is the executive labor that the business is consuming and not paying you for. Now, if you had to pay market rate for someone to do everything you currently do to hold this together, your margin would vanish. That's the founder subsidy, okay? And this is where, your business is, this is where the salary the business isn't paying because you're absorbing the work for free, okay? Your margin is a lie if it relies on you working overtime to maintain it. So you don't have a profitable business yet. You have a profitable founder propping up a business, which is a completely different dynamic, okay? So I want you to put a number on this. List every executive level function you personally perform that isn't documented or owned by someone else, okay? So final QC, escalations, closing big deals, rework and rescue, answering same questions repeatedly, holding key relationships together, all these different things. And next to each one, write the monthly market salary for a competent person to own it properly. You know, add it up, subtract it from your stated profit, and what's left is your real margin. If the number's thin, negative, or uncomfortable to look at, you now know exactly what the 5 layers are costing you. And hiring a junior doesn't fix it, it usually increases it, because now you do the rework, plus you manage the person who done it wrong. So you can't hire your way out of the founder subsidy, you systemize your way out in the order above. This is the, one of the biggest things to actually look at here that founders miss, because, as much as I advocate for having healthy margins in place, if you have healthy margins at the cost of you being heavily involved in the business and the day-to-day runnings, that healthy margin is extremely unhealthy because your business will collapse without you, okay? So that 70 to 80% margin, it's not a flex whatsoever. The true indicator of a healthy margin is a margin in which you're able to retain decent cash flow and profitability without you having to actually be as heavily involved in the business, where you're essentially the key man or key woman. And even if that means the margin dropping slightly because you need to get other people involved so that you can step away, that's perfectly fine. That is way more better than you working 100-hour weeks just to maintain that margin and that false image that makes your business look way more better than it actually is. Now, let's get into the time paradox here, because again, we spoke about this at the start, and this is the objection you're already feeling, where it comes back to you as a founder, feeling too buried being the bottleneck to build the thing that removes the bottleneck. And I always deal with this whenever I speak with my advisory clients, because typically, naturally, they're already busy as it is. Now, I'm not going to deny it. This is a real feeling that you'll naturally have, and it's that there's there's reason behind it. It's also the exact trap. The reason you stay the bottleneck is that fixing it always loses to the urgent work in front of you, and the urgent work is infinite. Build time does not happen in found time because the business expands to fill every hour you leave open. So you ring fence it. This is where you'd block the build time like a client call, and you protect it just as hard. Not, when things calm down, because things do not calm down, and you should know that as a founder. So a founder-dependent business never gives you a quiet week. You have to take it. So I'm doing this right now with one of my clients, where he's literally blocking out time, whether it's 15 minutes or even 30 minutes out of his busy schedule, to map out a copywriting playbook so that his copywriters underneath him eventually have a playbook on how they can write VSLs for various verticals so that he can step away from fulfillment by the end of this quarter, which is taking up a lot of his time. Naturally, he can't spend hours and hours on it, and that was his thought process to begin with. But when we actually shifted the thought process to actually treating it as if we're spending an hour or two with a client, the dynamics change from a psychological standpoint to a point where you protect that time, like it's your own baby, and you actually work on getting it fixed. So this is the thing, when someone says they don't have time, you always have time. You're just not prioritizing things, and that's fine. And therefore you need to shift your thinking in terms of prioritizing this so you can actually have the time opened up down the line. Now, here's what makes this worth it. This work compounds in a way firefighting never does. Every process that you capture once is a process you never explain again. Every decision rule you define is a decision that stops routing to your inbox. And the hour you spend extracting something today gets repaid every single time someone else, would otherwise have interrupted you to ask. Okay, so firefighting buys you one quiet afternoon. This buys you back the same hour over and over and over again for as long as the business runs, okay? And here's the hard truth. If you won't protect the build time, you're choosing to stay the bottleneck, okay? It won't feel like a choice, it will feel like circumstance. It's a decision. The founders who get free are simply the ones who paid for the build up front instead of paying the subsidy forever. So this translates to manning the fuck up, setting time to the side to actually, get yourself out of the weeds, as opposed to being a big baby and saying you don't have the time. You absolutely do have the time. You just need to treat it with the up level or the utmost priority as you would with an actual client, because this is just as, if not more important, when it comes to the health and scalability of your business. Now, here's why you actually won't let go. And, this is the final layer under all of it. And if you skip this, none of the systems stick. You have to be honest about why you personally hold on. Because when a founder won't let go of something, it's almost always one of 5 reasons, and they split it into 2 types that need opposite fixes. The emotional blocks, these are about you. And this is, I actually went over this in a separate video on this channel here, and you can go check that out. I can't actually remember from the top of my head what topic it was, but again, you can find it accordingly. The first of which is emotional blocks, okay? It's about you. Your ego. Only you can do it to the standard it needs. Sometimes true, but usually it's pride dressed up as QC. Inertia. I've always done it, so I just keep doing it. No decision was ever made to keep it on your plate. It just never got questioned, so you just keep doing it. Control. I don't trust anyone else to touch this. So the fear of it being done worse keeps it permanently yours, okay? So these are emotional blocks, which is causing you to not let go of these things and actually go down the path of systemization. Now let's talk about structural blocks, and these are to do with the business, okay? This is where from one of these 2 things, the first which is clarity, you can't hand this off because you don't know what it involves. So the process was never mapped, so it can't be transferred, i.e., let's say, for example, the sales process. If you don't have a process, how are you going to transfer that over to a rep? Capacity. There's genuinely no one to give this to. So the seat to receive it doesn't exist yet, okay? So the reason why labeling matters is because these 2 types of things need opposite fixes. And if your blocks are structural, there's nothing to confront, and there's nothing to confront in yourself, you simply haven't built the thing yet, and everything above builds it. So the 2 different things that we note today, emotional blocks and structural blocks, it needs different fixes, okay? Because it's, 2 different realms of discussion here in terms of the problems and the solutions required. If your blocks are emotional, no system will save you because the bottleneck isn't the business, it's you, okay? The fix there is a confrontation, not a template. And accepting that 90% done by someone else consistently beats 100% done by you, occasionally. That, and also that you're paying for control with your own freedom, and the price is everything this video is trying to give you back, okay? Most founders, most of you watching this right now, it's a combination of these things, and the point is to know which task is stuck for which reason, because systemizing an ego problem fails, and mindset coaching is a capacity problem. And mindset coaching a capacity problem is just stalling, okay? This is where you want to diagnose honestly, and then apply the, apply the matching fix. And if you can't tell already, it's bloody 5:40 a.m. So forgive me if I'm dragging towards the end here. Now, before we wrap up the video here, guys, I want you to do this exercise here. And this is the full dependency audit, because you can't fix what you refuse to measure. This is where you score each layer 1 to 5. 1, it runs fine without me. 5, it depends entirely without me. So the first layer, which is knowledge, which is to do with knowledge. If you dissipate for 30 days, not 30 years, wow, bloody hell, imagine that. 30 days, could the team find the how-to for the core work in writing? Score it 1 to 5. Decision. How much of your team's work stalls in a normal week waiting for your answer or approval? 1 to 5. Relationship. If you stepped out of client communication for a month, how much churn would you honestly expect? Score it 1 to 5. Delivery. How much ships without you checking, polishing, or fixing it first? 5 equals nothing. Ships without you. 1 to 5. Score it again. If you if you stop selling for 30 days, what happens to your new revenue? 1 to 5, okay? Then 3 more steps here. Locate it. Name the function where your highest scoring layer lives. Marketing, sales, fulfillment, operations, or finance. That intersection, layer times function, is your first fix. Not get better at delegating. 1 layer, 1 function, 1 starting point. Then you want to price it. You want to run the founder subsidy calculation from above. Real margin equates to stated profit minus the market cost of your unpaid executive labor. And this is where you want to write the number down because that's your monthly cost of changing nothing. And then finally, you want to name the block. So for your 3 highest scoring layers, write down why you're actually still holding each one: ego, inertia, control, clarity, or capacity. And then you want to circle whether it's emotional or structural, because that tells you whether the fix is a build or confrontation, and getting that wrong is why the last attempt didn't stick, okay? Then you can read your total out of 25. 20 to 25, the business is structurally you. Nothing meaningful runs without your involvement, and every new client makes it heavier. The order in this video is not optional for you. Knowledge and decision first, everything else waits. Ignore the pull to fix what hurts loudest, regardless of what is screaming, okay? 13 to 19, you've partially escaped 1 or 2 layers, usually by accident, and your highest scores are your roadmap. If you built systems before and it didn't free you, check your decision, relationship, and sales scores, because that's almost certainly where the escape failed. Under 13, you're actually further along than most, and your remaining high scores are the last dependency standing. And for most founders at this stage, it's relationships and sales, and the two that egos guard the hardest, okay? So look, in terms of where we scored, this is a win in itself, because an hour ago, that number didn't exist, and now you have it. Plus, the exact intersection to start at, the monthly price of leaving it alone, and the honest reason you've been holding on, okay? The founders who get free, they aren't more disciplined than you, and they just simply stopped fixing one hole in a boat with 5 and starting working the whole hull foundation first. So again, they're not fixing things with systems in isolation, because that's just one piece of the puzzle. They are fixing it with all of the pieces of the puzzle in mind, okay? That's pretty much it for the video. That's how to build a business that runs without you, and why systems alone won't do it. Now, if there's anything you guys want covered next, leave a comment below, or if you have any questions, just reach out to me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. This video will put you on the right track to ultimately start to systemize your business in the proper way, so that it can actually run without you. But if you need further help in doing this with me by your side, feel free to swing me a message, and I'm more than happy to advise further. We can set you up with a free audit, and in that audit, it will show you how to actually achieve founder freedom, freedom from founder dependency within the space of 90 days. Okay, so swing me a message there. And if you're new here, the video cadence is once a week depending on brain capacity. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it. These are my socials. Check me out, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers guys, bye.